This podcast is brought to you by the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, an organization committed to providing leadership, vision, and resources to those who work to eradicate sexual violence in our communities.
My name is Jennifer Long. I'm the director of AEquitas, the prosecutor's resource on violence against women in Washington, D.C. I'm here at the CALCASA Campus Institute in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'm speaking on coordinating the victim interview and prosecuting non-stranger rapists.
I'm Christopher Mallios. I'm an attorney advisor at AEquitas, and I came here to Las Vegas to present on two different topics. First, I presented this morning on a coordinated community response to campus sexual assault. Tomorrow, I'll be presenting on the investigation and prosecution of alcohol-facilitated sexual assault, which is unfortunately a very common occurrence on college campuses. AEquitas is a prosecutor's resource center. We are funded by the Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Women, and we provide training and technical assistance to prosecutors and other allied professionals who provide services and interact with victims of sexual violence, domestic and dating violence, and stalking. We run national training institutes, and we also come to national events like this institute to help train and explain the role of the prosecutor and how prosecutors and law enforcement and in working with other disciplines can get the best possible response for victims of sexual violence, domestic dating violence, and stalking.
AEquitas is actually the name of a Roman goddess, and it is the term for justice, but beyond a narrow interpretive justice, but again, this equality and this fairness, where you're looking at cases, again, outside of just applying the laws to what has happened, to determine what has happened, and to looking at the entire situation and thinking about not only what does the law say, but what is the just response to a situation? What is justice in a particular case?
And the name AEquitas, really, it almost sounds like equality, and we think of AEquitas being equal justice, that the victims of sexual violence and domestic and dating violence and stalking, they deserve the same type of justice that a burglary victim or a robbery victim gets. No one goes and attacks a robbery victim when she reports to the police and says, "Why did you get robbed? What did you do to bring this on?" But unfortunately, we sometimes see victims of these crimes who are treated that way, whether they're treated that way by the police or maybe insensitive things that are done by prosecutors. And most certainly, when they get into court, there's going to be someone there who's trying to defend the perpetrator, who's going to try and bring up these types of arguments. And it's the role of the prosecutor to stop that from happening and shut that down and make sure that they get the same access to justice that any other victim would want and deserves.
There are upwards of 30,000 prosecutors across the country, and that depending on what jurisdiction your crime happens in, depending on what office you're in, if you're not lucky enough to have mentors like I had, because Chris was my former boss in Philadelphia, or resources or training or just access to people who are able to prosecute these cases in a particular way, then these prosecutors are operating under very heavy caseloads. They're overburdened. When resources are short, it's the first thing to go is training and sometimes prosecutors. And so we wanted to be able to form an organization that was staffed enough and with enough people, and there are 7 of us now, 5 former prosecutors, a medical advisor, and a communications and operations person, who can provide technical assistance, training, resources on emerging issues and other issues related to the prosecution of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, in a way that helped even the playing field with these prosecutors so that they could draw on those resources. And it was really that commitment to doing that, because the criminal justice system in and of itself is never going to prevent violence. However, it's a critical piece of it, and so many times, even well-meaning prosecutors may ignore or overlook victims of sexual assault because they either don't recognize what has happened or they don't have the training and education to go forward on a case.
In addition to attending an AEquitas training or hearing an AEquitas attorney present at a national training like this, they can just call us up and say, I'm working on a case, I'm investigating a case, I'm getting ready for trial, I have some questions, and we'll just sit down and go over the case with them and strategize with them. They can send us emails, they can call us, they can even call us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we'll have someone who can respond and try and help them with their case. And we have 6 attorney advisors at AEquitas. We are all former prosecutors, and we all have a track record of going into court and trying tough cases and fighting for victims in really difficult cases. And we feel really strongly that that's important, and that's something that needs to be shared with people in a lot of different audiences. Sometimes we see people have concerns about conviction rates, because these are hard cases to win. And you know, if someone's really concerned about their conviction rate, a way to increase a conviction rate is to just don't try hard cases, don't try sexual assault cases, don't try domestic violence cases. That'll raise your conviction rate, but what it's doing in terms of protecting your community and protecting victims and getting justice for victims who have been victims of some pretty horrific crimes, that's another story. And what we like to talk about is that it's not all about conviction rates. It's about getting in there and fighting the good fight and giving victims their day in court when you have a case where you believe you're victim and you have a crime that you can prove.
Because of this narrow focus on what justice was, just convictions, what happened is along the way people did lose sight of the fact that there was a victim of a case, or that there was an offender who purposefully did actions to victimize a victim. And so this approach of victim-centered, offender-focused, they're not just terms that we use. It's really talking to prosecutors and other allied professionals about what it means to keep the victim at the center of a prosecution. And for us, it's again just understanding the impact of each decision on a victim, and even where the victim's goals and the criminal justice goals are going to diverge, and it's going to happen sometimes, where we're able to communicate the reasons why to the victim and make sure that the victim is well represented so that her or his voice is heard in the process. And then on offender focus, anecdotally, experientially, and what we know from the research is there are no coincidences with offenders. They're very purposeful, they're very manipulative, they know how to take advantage of victim vulnerabilities, and they know how to set things up so that they look like the victim and the focus is totally on the victim. And what we really spend time is showing, really exposing these defendants to and perpetrators to prosecutors and helping them learn how to do that in trials. So that we're not asking what did the victim do in these cases, but we're really putting it back on the offender. What did the offender do, and how he should be held accountable for that.
And we're strong advocates for prosecutors working in coordinated community response teams, working in multidisciplinary teams with advocates and police and prosecutors and medical professionals and campus representatives and whoever else it takes, whether you're dealing with people in the criminalistics and DNA laboratory or in the faith-based community or wherever there are people who have an interest and who deal with victims of sexual assault. They all need to be working together so that the victims get the best possible response, so that everyone's sharing information with each other, so the systems know how all the different agencies work, and ultimately so that victims have access, and victims and survivors have access to all of the services that are out there to help them get through this and heal, and hopefully to hold offenders accountable as well.
So the critical idea that I want people to walk away from my presentations is the importance of your approach to victims and to sexual assault totally, and that if you or another member of your coordinated community response has an attitude that's based on myth or misperceptions, there's no way that your team, even if it has all the textbook players, is going to be able to be as effective as it needs to be. And just understanding how ingrained these myths and misperceptions are and how important it is for us as prosecutors and other members of the team to check our own biases and to help educate other members of the team to give victims justice.
And I think the point that I would like people to take away from my presentations here at this institute is that the criminal justice response to sexual violence is an important one. And the criminal justice system has to be there to look at these cases fairly and critically, and not be afraid to bring difficult cases into the criminal justice system. if a victim was drinking a lot, if a victim was using drugs, or if a victim just simply trusted someone who turned out to be a sexual predator and maybe made some choices that in retrospect looked like they were mistakes or showed bad judgment, that doesn't mean that she wasn't raped. And we have to stop victim blaming, and the people working in the criminal justice system have to stop victim blaming and looking at these cases, and if they have a case where they believe the victim and they believe the victim was a victim of a crime of sexual violence, then they need to go into court and try that case and do their best to win that case. But we're going to lose some, but we're going to win some too. And whether we win or lose, giving a victim her or his day in court is an important thing, and it's an important role that the criminal justice system can play. We're honored to be asked to participate in CALCASA's Campus Sexual Assault Institute. And we are here. Our message is that we're here for the people that are working with victims of sexual violence. Call us, check out our website, or email us. We're here to help the people who are working with these victims and survivors and working on these cases, and we're helping them to find ways to help victims and really redefine justice in a way that holds offenders accountable and gives victims the same type of justice that victims of all other types of cases get.
Thank you for listening. This episode was brought to you by the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault. For more information about CALCASA's mission or to show your support, please visit our website, calcasa.org. That's CALCASA.org. If you'd like to watch or listen to other presentations like this one, you can subscribe to our podcast feed. Visit www.calcasa.org/feed/podcast.